Sparks fly following, oh, that's right, the Sparks game. Cameron Rubin going to talk to us about it. She was there reporting for us. And Aaron Roussell of the Richmond Spiders, head coach who succeeded everywhere, joining us later in the show. A lot to get to. Locked On Women's Basketball starts now.
You are Locked On Women's Basketball, your daily podcast on women's basketball. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hi, everyone, and welcome to Locked On Women's Basketball. I'm your host, Howard Megdal. I want to thank you for making us your first listen every day. It is not just me. It is the incredible team across the board, across generations at the Next, where we cover women's basketball past, present, and future. Subscribe now, $9 a month, $72 a year. Get it all right to your inbox at thenexthoops.com. And we are joined by Charlie, who is, of course, our youngest correspondent, working with Cameron Ruby, who covers the Sparks for us with great distinction. Cameron, how old is Charlie? And, how far along is Charlie's coverage, would you say, at this point?
Charlie is 10 weeks old, almost 11. She doesn't quite get the ins and outs yet, but she has the enthusiasm. So we're happy to include her.
For sure. And Charlie gets the Sparks matter.
She gets it. Yeah.
I joke, but truly, like, Cameron, what you're doing at the same time you have a newborn, the incredible coverage is just something absolutely to be celebrated. And so you were at the Sparks game last night, an 89-81 victory for the Golden State Valkyries, who are surprisingly spry early on in their tenure as a WNBA team. But post game, you were there when Kelsey Plum went off. Kind of take me through what happened and what her complaints about, concerns are about the way in which she's being officiated.
Yeah, I think she came into the post game pretty upset, and I think her thought process is warranted. I think she drives to the basket a ton. She's historically been pretty good at drawing fouls. The Valkyries are a physical team. I think a lot of that comes from the international experience that they have, and she was definitely feeling that from some of their guards last night. She, kind of showed off some scratches and bumps and bruises that she'd gotten in the game, and just spoke to the fact that she only took 6 free throws last night and had some frustration with how the game was called. So yeah, it was a quick conversation, but we'll see if anything changes.
I want to throw a couple of numbers out to sort of ground the conversation, because I think it's really interesting. And certainly Kelsey Plum and her ability to finish has been a critical part of her game dating back to her Pac-12 days, as sure. We all know, as you all know. You're not seeing early on that she's taken considerably more. If you go by percentage of field goal attempts, 0 to 3 feet out, she's at 10.3% so far this year. She was at 9.1 last year. She's actually had years higher than that. Back in 2022, she was at 18.5%, 0 to 3. And so the reason I'm bringing that up is just, you think about how often she is getting to the basket, and then therefore, what are the fouls, what are the free throw attempts that she's getting as a result of it? Well, free throw attempts per 100 possessions, she's at 7.9 this year. That's by far the highest number she said. That's even 6.3 back in 2022. So to a certain extent, it seems like, wow, she is getting quite a few calls around the rim. But the flip side of it is, and I was watching that game last night too, you sit there and you say, boy, she is going there again and again and again. And this has been happening in the last 5 games. She had 6 free throw attempts total in the game last night that went to overtime. And that was also a high in any of her last 5. So just from your perspective, what are you seeing? How valid is her concern about this?
Yeah, I think a caveat that she added post game that I'll reiterate is that 3 of those free throws were from one 3-point shot. So they weren't even from a drive to the basket. And one of them was from a technical. So she actually only got to the line once on any drive to the bucket. I think in general, I think it's a combo. I think last night I'm inclined to agree with her. I think there was some stuff that went uncalled under the basket. Maybe on both sides, but definitely, I'm paying more attention to what's happening to her. And, I think she's not wrong. I will also say, I think part of it is likely she has a lot more on her shoulders this year. The responsibility she feels on the offensive end is more than she's ever had in her career.
Yeah.
So I think, it was very clear that the Valkyries came in with a game plan of playing physical with her specifically. And this is, again, like I said, the share of offense that she's expected to take is more than she's had to ever before, maybe since her days at Washington. So I think it's a combination. I think it was definitely a really physical game, especially under the basket. I don't think she was the only one who was frustrated, but I also think that, the responsibility and kind of weight she feels to score points is just pretty significant right now. And that definitely contributed.
It's a usage rate that's 29%. It's north of where she's ever been, as you said. What's fascinating, by the way, when you sort of dig into her numbers a little bit, is the only thing that's lagging is the twos. She is hitting her threes right at her career norms. She's hitting her free throws when she's getting there, right at her career norms. And I do not believe that she is going to falter from two, especially at the rim. But do you think she's getting her shots in the places you would want her to get her shots if you're the Sparks?
I do, but I think she has the strongest guard defender on the other team on her at all times, and people are rotating through and putting fresh legs on her. Last night she saw a few different matchups, and I think the Sparks have some exciting guard play, some young guard play, but they've been plagued with some injuries. They've got they had a rookie in the starting lineup for a little bit, and Sarah Ashley. Rakia's been out, Ray's been out, so it's pretty easy for other teams to give her 90% of their focus at the guard spot, and she's feeling that. I think even if she's getting to her spots and shooting from where she wants, I could probably count on one hand the number of easy looks she's had all season. I mean, the threes last night were step back, pull up in somebody's face, and Kelsey Plum's not getting open looks, especially on this Sparks team.
No question about it. It does not get any easier for her. She's headed to Las Vegas for a reunion with her former teammates, and then you have to go to Minnesota following this. Just bigger picture as we look at this Sparks team, 3-7 to start. Again, Lynn Roberts in her first year, there's a lot to implement, especially the offense that Lynn Roberts brings, which is complicated, that goes along with it. I know the Sparks have playoff hopes and dreams as we're about at the quarter mark. Do you see them on pace to do that? It is a league where there's a bit of a jumble in the bottom six.
Yeah, I mean, I think they have flashes of stuff that looks really good. I think that there's no denying the chemistry between Dearica and Kelsey. I think they're both hoping for a little more help soon. Azare's had some really great games, but I think, they need a little more support in the guard spot specifically. I'm hoping that as Rakia plays back from her concussion, that we'll see something look a little bit different. But I'd say that the flow and kind of the rhythm has been what's been the problem for them so far. So, I think they are newer in terms of compatibility than most teams in the league this year. And so, I chalk a lot of it up to that. And so I think my answer is I don't know. I think it really depends what they take from this and how they kind of improve their, ability to play through pressure. And also, their ability to play as a team has been rough. The first couple of games, there was a lot of turnovers and a lot of easy turnovers, and also just like not a lot of flow. Last night, there were glimpses of it. I think for the first time, I felt really encouraged by some of the playmaking, even through Azare. Some of the passes from Kelsey and to Dearica are fun to watch. They play so well together. But I think it all really depends on kind of how their team orientation breaks down through the rest of the season.
Going to be fascinating. Looking forward to hearing a lot more from Cameron Ruby and, of course, from Charlie as well. Thank you both very much. We'll be back after this break talking to Aaron Roussell, one of my favorites in this business, about the Richmond Spiders and USA basketball. Back after this. Locked on Women's Basketball is brought to you by DoorDash. And as you may know, the NBA playoffs are going on right now. For those who may not be aware, the NBA it's a professional basketball league, but men play in it, the NBA. Check it out. And DoorDash is bringing the heat with a slam dunk deal for Dash Pass members during the 2025 NBA playoffs. So anytime a player drops 50 or more points in a playoff game, Dash Pass members score a free three-piece crispy tenders combo from Wingstop the very next day. They call it They Swoosh, You Score. So just place an order of $20 or more, use the code WINSTOP50 at checkout, and that combo is yours. Crispy, delicious, and totally free. Offer valid noon to midnight the day after the game. Terms apply. Again, 50 points, which, I think of obviously informally as a Michaela Blake's. If it happens in the NBA playoffs, this deal is activated. Just sign up for Dash Pass to unlock this and more exclusive deals all season long. $20 plus order, code WINSTOP50, get the three-piece crispy tenders combo. That's Dash Pass, your door to more savings, more flavors, and more ways to win. Back here, Locked On Women's Basketball. And here in segment 2, we have, so do we call you the USA Basketball head coach for U19, Richmond Spiders? Do we call you the baseball dad? Aaron, what's the best way for me to formally introduce you to our audience?
I'll tell you what, I'm really enjoying being the Spiders coach, but number one is being a dad too. So as crazy as it sounds, I know you were kind of running around picking people up, but Uber driver / shuttle driver might be the most accurate these days. But no, man, this is it's been a really good spot, and obviously getting to coach, be a court coach with the rest of the staff. With the U19s is just incredible. Just such an amazing experience that's going to be coming up, and throw on top of that the AmeriCup tryouts are going to be going out, so you got their staff and committee out there as well. So I'm just looking forward to being a sponge, but it should be a really cool experience.
I admire your work-life balance, by the way, and I can't let that go unsaid. But you're right, absolutely. Driving to and from and is a critical part of this. The nerd in me particularly enjoys what you've done at Richmond and the ways in which you've done it. Our audience, and we've introduced you before. I think the first time you came on, you were at Bucknell still, and you have had this trajectory, and I just want people to understand it, because here's how it works. You first coached at University of Chicago,
right? And
you're 16-14 when you get there. You're 27-1 in your final year there. You're at Bucknell. You're 15-16 your first year there. You're 28-6 your last year at Bucknell. You go to Richmond. I remember talking to folks about this at the time. I'm just like, this is the pattern. You're 15-17 your first year there. 28-7 this year after 29-6 last year. It's not a series of coincidences, to my view. And I'm curious from your view, when you think about those trajectories, what are like the takeaways from your mind of where the overlap is in those three moments for you?
Well, not lost on me, three similar institutions, with great people around. I'd say the first part of each of those, and I know the culture word kind of gets thrown around, but I really just think that we've really been very intentional about the expectations that we've had, both for what that current roster is when we took it over, but also just incredibly intentional about where we want that program to be 4 years down the road. And even with this job here, the most recent one here with Richmond, the transfer portal was way different in 2019 than what it is now. It was way different 2012. There wasn't a transfer portal in 2004 when you take over Division III, University of Chicago. So each of those places, I went in talking with our players, talking with our administrations, and with our assistant coaches about year 4. Let's make sure we're establishing things. This is not going to be a quick fix necessarily. We want steady improvement, but by year 4, I want this to be a program that we are expecting to win a conference championship, or at least have a chance to win a conference championship every year. I never want to do this spike and go back down and rebuild. we had a lot of older players, really the last 2 years, and maybe dabbled with the grad transfers a little bit this year, but we're going to be a younger team. But that's not going to change our expectations. And Maggie Dugan, Rachel Olstrom would kill me if our expectations were different this coming year than what they were last year.
You talked about, you had a quote with our Natalie Hevern, who does such a good job covering the A10 over at the Nets, that you had the blueprint. And by the way, it's just fascinating to me. Again, you look at the patterns. Year 4, you're 22-6 in year 4 at University of Chicago. You're 25-8 at Bucknell, and that was your first 20-win season at Richmond in 22-23. So you talked about the transfer portal changing, but there's also the fact that from 2019 to the present, this has been unlike any period of time in college basketball history. And the COVID year is just one part of it, but that blew up a whole lot of people's individual plans. What do you think allowed you to stay on track in this moment, in this period of time, to be able to adjust in this way? Because like you said, you built differently this time.
Yeah. I think the type of institution that we are at, helps, right? I think we were also intentional on when we brought players here that, we want basketball to be a big deal to you. I always tell our players, I want you to want to go pro. I love when kids have come in, whether it's transfers, whether it's incoming kids with minds on playing pro, whether that's the WNBA, whether that's professionally overseas, whatever it may be. But I like when they have that. But I also tell them, and I tell their parents, what if along the way, University of Richmond provides you with other experiences that, when you graduate, you get a better job than what they can offer you with basketball, then the mission accomplished as well. I want you to have both of those options. So again, I don't mean to say like we're the only people that treat our kids right, but I think it's more than just basketball with our players. The conversations that we have, the things that we talk about. Addie Budnick, a few years ago could have grad transferred a lot of places and made a lot of money. She was very dedicated to this program and very, I don't want to say loyal like the others weren't, but, she had a tremendous amount of pride in what we were doing. Same with Maggie, with Rachel, with Allie Sweeney this year. None of them were in the transfer portal, but I think they all knew that they had plenty of opportunities to go elsewhere and what other people maybe would have called greener pastures. So the fact that they have so much pride in what we're doing, I think our staff has so much pride in what we're doing in Richmond. I think that's maybe what it is with the blueprint of just people that really want to be here. I have no expectations. Not like I think that this is going to be the same retention rate every year. I have no idea. But I do know that we've talked about other things besides basketball with our incoming players, with our recruits, and they want to be here, I think, for more than just basketball. But I think when you look at it right now, look what Maggie's doing with USA Basketball. Look what some of our other kids did with USA Basketball with 3x3. Like I'm getting calls from WNBA kids about or WNBA scouts about multiple players on our roster. Yeah. Those things can be done here. And I think there's also things outside of basketball that can remain attractive, both to come here, but also to remain here as well.
Everything you said is borne out by the reality on the ground, right? You're seeing this type of retention. When you have a winning team, and this as well as anyone, you have to make choices about who plays more, who plays less. There's always going to have complete buy-in, or else some people are going to be ultimately unhappy about it. But there's that bigger picture. And this, to me, is maybe as big a sea change in the overall landscape of women's basketball as any I can remember. And so back in 2016, I remember talking to a WNBA GM about Jonquel Jones, and now former WNBA GM said she didn't go to a Power 5. How good should she be? It was essentially the idea that came behind it. Now, I think we know now how good she can be, but this sort of nonsense idea that this is this narrow world, it's possible to have this kind of success in a way that I think everyone recognizes. And so we'll get a little more into it in segment 3 about sort of, you getting the USA Basketball call, that we're hearing about it for your players as well. We're at a moment where, and we talked about Lynn Roberts' sparks in the segment 1, what she was doing from an analytics perspective, from a shot selection perspective, is so much And so similar to what Carl Smeshko was doing at FGCU. Now we both find them in the WNBA. And your shot chart, which is just this thing of beauty for people who don't go on CBB analytics. You took 2.8% of your shots last year outside the paint, inside the three-point line. I mean, just a ridiculously small number. So wait, I wanted to break. I want to get to you on the other side about this, about the way in which you are building something that feels very much like where the game is going and doing it at Richmond. So much more with Aaron Roussell just after this. But first, Locked On Women's Basketball is brought to you by Monarch Money. And Monarch Money is an opportunity to do more than just budget. Every time you check your bank account and wonder, where did all my money go between dining, online shopping, and entertainment? It's easy to lose track, but that's where Monarch Money comes in. It's like your personal CFO, giving you full visibility and control over your finances. You can track all your accounts, investments, and spending in one place so you can stop managing your money and start building wealth. Monarch Money gives you this all-in-one convenience for people who are busy like myself. Cannot stress to you enough how easy it is to make sure you're spending right. Take control of your finances with Monarch Money. Use code LOCKEDONNBA at monarchmoney.com for 50% off your first year. That's monarchmoney.com, code LOCKEDONNBA for half off your first year. Monarch Money. Howard Megdal, Locked On Women's Basketball, back here with Aaron Roussell, Richmond Spiders. So again, I just want to go back to that point. Does it feel like some sort of external validation for the way in which you're approaching things on the offensive end when you see those two coaches being asked to bring that system into WNBA franchises?
Yeah, maybe a little bit, but I felt like I was validated watching other people before we even adopted this, right? And I think when we've always, even going back to Chicago, I remember calling it kind of a Euro style. We said positionless before it was cool to say positionless back at Chicago and Bucknell as well. Not taking any credit for that, but I think we've always tried to play this way. But we were doing it in a different manner. I think when Grace Townsend, after her freshman year, kind of realized that she was really good in ball screens, and we didn't set a lot of ball screens. It was very motion concepts, and that was kind of going along with COVID. So there were so many people that were online sharing and videos and clinics and all of that sort of stuff. And I just remember diving into it and really being fascinated. Kind of coincided with a couple friends of mine that had gotten NBA jobs, was probably watching more NBA, was understanding more about FIBA and that world. And just really enjoyed it. I hate that I'm on social media, sometimes probably too much, but by golly, man, as a coach, Twitter is fantastic for learning things and finding different concepts. And so I think I've seen it work. I had seen it work so many other places. I think it was more just a question of, was I smart enough to install it? Did we have the personnel? Did I understand it the right way? And would everybody buy in? And you mentioned the mid-range jump shots. Like, yeah, man, I probably have had a few battles with some really good players that think they're very efficient in the mid-range, and there are kids that are. And this is not Coach Roussell saying we don't shoot mid-range jump shots. That's not it. And sometimes you mentioned the shot chart, where I always joke that we want it to look like a donut, right? Like we want everything at the basket, we want everything at three. But there are times, right? I mean, there are times that you really want to be an efficient mid-range jump shot. Maggie Dugan's really good at it. Some of our other kids are really good at it. When they get to certain spots, we like that. A certain time in the shot clock, we like that. Against certain opponents, we like this. And I think the other part of it too is we've had so many good shooters at the 4 and 5 over the years that we probably haven't had to shoot those mid-range jump shots. Grace Townsend played a different way at North Carolina. They had a really, really good post player. So I remember when she left, was like, yo, man, like this is not Addie Budnick at the arc. So you getting to the basket may not happen the same. You're going to have to really work on that mid-range jump shot because they have good post players. They're going to occupy the post. Addie Budnick's gone this year for us. So some of that might change, but I think nothing changes from the sense that we go into each season saying we want to be one of the most efficient offenses in the country. And numbers wise, yeah, it helps if you're scoring at the basket and being efficient there and wide open threes. Again, I appreciate that you appreciate what we do, but I don't want this to mean like we figured this out. We don't ever shoot mid-range jump shots.
Sure.
We just want to make sure there's the why, and it's not getting. We're not settling for those. Just as we don't want to settle for a contested layup, we don't want to settle for a contested three. I think it kind of just goes into our model of getting open shots, being efficient in how we play.
I mean, it's the looks you are getting are open, to your point, right? And again, right, you don't have to settle for a mid-range jump shot when your top 4 by 3-point attempts were all at 39% or higher last year. So, that is a luxury to have as much as it is a system to have. I guess the flip side of that is, as you are now recruiting players, are you seeing that as sort of a two-way experience, or are players seeing the way you're playing and almost self-selecting for playing for Richmond at this point?
Yeah, I think maybe the ones that know, and maybe the AAU coaches and high school coaches that know how we play, know it's a fit. There's still an education that needs to happen, right? There's still a pecking order. Most kids go into it and go down the top 25 and go through the power fours and, want to go play as high as they can play, and more power to them, right? You have a goal, your lifelong goal, you've worked for this. I never really try to talk anybody out of that. But, I also look at what Maggie Dugan has done. I look at what Addie Budnick has done. They found the right fit. Could Maggie Dugan have done this other places? Man, I love that kid. I got all the credit. I got all the confidence in the world in her. That kid can do anything. But I also know that this system fits her, and she knows that. Addie knew that. And so the career that Addie Budnick had, she played with a lot of really good players that went to higher levels. I don't let anybody that she played with had as remarkable or as successful as a college career as she did. She's going to be in our Hall of Fame. There's going to be, band, all of that sort of stuff. So I think there just has to be that education. We have to do our job as recruiters to educate folks that this is a great fit for you and what you can do. So I think those things go hand in hand. But I think for the right kid, yes, we are looking for those sort of things. But, Maggie Dugan will be the first one to tell you she's not everything either. So sometimes it's going to get a great offensive rebounder, which I think we did this offseason to kind of complement what she does and help her a little bit. So I'm probably babbling a little bit, but I don't think we pigeonhole our recruits. But I really love coaching offense whenever all 5 kids can shoot it. There's no question about that.
I just want to take a couple of minutes and list all the teams who had more points per scoring attempt last year than you guys. That's the end of the list. You were first out of 362. And again, to your point, as we are in this moment where there's money to be made, there's an opportunity to go to other schools at different times, finding that right fit, making sure it's not about tomorrow, but it's for, what is your overall college experience going to be like? I mean, it's just going to be something. Look, I hope, and it's just a point of personal privilege as a host, I hope that we see a little less movement, not because I don't think players should have freedom to be able to do it, but because it means that more people are finding fits and finding a comfort level that goes along with it. When there's turnover, that means that there are people who are not where they're happiest being. And to your point about Addie and Maddie, and I'm so curious. Maggie was 63% from 2 last year. Like is there? And she's gone up each of the past 3 years. Like, is there another level for Maggie? And obviously, the off-season experience she's getting here is only going to add to that.
Yeah, I think our program had the awesome experience to go down and be a part of the USA Basketball 3x3, and watching our 4 kids that went down there, playing against another level. That was. They're better basketball players coming out of that weekend, going and playing and beating Georgia Tech, playing UCLA as well as we did in the tournament. I think our players are sitting and saying that shouldn't be the pinnacle for us. That kind of, in a way, just kind of whet the appetite of what we can be. So, the reason that we were good is because our best players worked incredibly hard. Those great players are working even harder right now. So there's no question. And Maggie's been very deliberate in asking me of, hey, coach, what can I work on? Talking to her even this past week, like I've told her, I want you focused on USA Basketball. I don't need you focused on Richmond Spiders. But if you're working on your development and getting stronger and finishing at the basket, you mentioned the 63% shooting from 2, like that was from a lot of film and trying to maybe tough conversations, but film of like, hey, some of these shots that you took were like shots that you can make, Maggie, but let's start taking the shots that you really are going to make at a high clip, at a really high efficiency. So we've identified that, identified getting stronger. I think she can get to the free throw line a little bit more. And, at the end of this, she will have developed into a really good player, whether that means, to the WNBA after this somewhere else, whether that means, who knows what the NCAA allows with these kids a year from now, 2 years from now, whatever it may be.
A day from now.
Right. But my point in saying all of this is she has developed, she's developed her game. She came in as a good player, but she really has the player development that we emphasize with our staff. And we talk about, of just making kids better basketball players for beyond, but also being deliberate in what we're doing in our workouts, with regard to our offense. They don't need to do a million things. Aaron Johnson told me this once, and maybe he wouldn't even remember this at South Dakota State, but their practices, their workouts are just doing things that they do with their offense. So it's not doing all the same things that maybe these kids were taught or trained to do during their AAU and everything else, but it's very intentional and being a part of their offense. I'd say the same thing for us too, and coming off different screens. So that being said, I think we play a style that fits the next level. So Maggie having excelled in this system just shows, her film is now showing coaches at that next level of what she can do with this, and also has the IQ of playing in a system that she's going to see at the professional level.
And I think that's the most exciting part, is that there is a broader understanding of the talent base as it exists. It's not a Power 5 or bust as this idea. And I think from the league level on down, there's an understanding from the players who are coming up, there's an opportunity. It all makes for a more cohesive overall landscape for women's basketball. So I just will, and because we are out of time, but I want our listeners to understand, you need to, as soon as the Richmond schedule comes out, go see where Richmond is playing, because we can get nerdy all you want about these numbers and everything, but just the flow, the way in which the team plays, operates, it's beautiful basketball. And it's something that people ought to make sure they're watching. Aaron Roussell, I appreciate your time. Always, we will definitely have you back many times in the future. To our listeners, thank you for making us your first listen every day. North of 350,000 of you in May alone. We will be back with you tomorrow, as we are 6 days a week. Until then, I'm Howard Megdal, wishing all of you a wonderful Tuesday.
You are Locked On Women's Basketball, your daily podcast on women's basketball. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.